Joining us live now is the Manager of Opposition Business, Paul Fletcher. Paul, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. Let's start off with coal and gas. The Prime Minister wants states to impose their own coal price caps. Your response to that?
Look, this is all over the place. They've been telling us for a while that they were going to have a plan, and new versions of the plan seem to emerge every day, every second day, with different commentary from different Labor ministers and backbenchers. What we know is that they went to an election telling us that energy prices would drop by $275, power bills would drop. Instead, we now have a budget where electricity up 56%, gas up 44% over the next 2 years, according to Labor's own budget. Let's see the plan, but all the signs are they're making it up as they go.
Well, this is the newest plan, though, to get a deal with the states for them to enact their own price caps on coal. As for that particular potential plan, would you support it?
Look, I'm not going to be making any comment until we see the details, but I have a strong suspicion they haven't sorted out the details. You know, the National Cabinet was supposed to be today until it was delayed because of the Prime Minister getting COVID, and here we are on the very day that the National Cabinet was supposed to be considering and signing off on a plan, and they're still clearly scrambling around trying to work out what the elements of the plan actually are. Now look, Labor's been in government for over 6 months. We know that rising energy prices are a huge problem for Australian families, also for Australian industry, and yet we hear highly contradictory messages. We know one of the things that has to happen is to deal with this issue of supply of gas. On any view, gas is critical. Gas is critical to Australian industry. Gas is critical as a transition fuel as we move to achieve net zero by 2050, which we need to do. And yet we've got contradictory views within the Labor Party. You've got Chris Bowen, who's been very, very critical about gas. You've got Madeleine King, who seems to be more supportive of it. We need the Prime Minister to come out with a decision on this issue and other issues. But any plan needs to address this issue of supply of gas.
So if this one isn't it, the deal with the states, what is a better alternative than that? Because the states would have to be involved anyway.
Well, again, Labor's in government. It's up to them to come up with a plan.
But you see parts of the deal today. I mean, it's there on the front page of the Australian. Do you have a view on that?
We've seen things dropped to the papers today, as we've seen dropped yesterday and the day before and the day before. We've seen a series of thought bubbles. This is all over the map. And so, no, I'm not going to be making a comment until we actually see something announced. We've been hearing for a while that there's going to be a plan by Christmas. Christmas is getting close.
Have you got a preferred way to go, though, just from people you're talking to?
Well, again, we're not in government. We're in opposition. What we need to see is a clear, coherent plan, but one that doesn't go for a short-term sugar hit and does serious medium and long-term damage. That's an important point.
Well, this all comes on a day when new details have come from Queensland. Its new royalty scheme has generated $3 billion, an extra $3 billion. That's almost 4 times the previous levels. I mean, isn't that an example where some of that should be shared with the punters?
Well, state and Commonwealth governments have different responsibilities. Again, I will leave it to the current government to sort out their relationships with state governments. But it shouldn't be a surprise to the Commonwealth government, to the Albanese Labor government, that individual state governments levy substantial royalties on minerals. That's a long-established feature of our constitutional arrangements. And again, it's very curious that Labor seems to be scrambling around dealing with these sort of breakouts on the issue. They will have known for months that that's how these arrangements operate. They've been in place for a very long time.
It seems fairly logical, though, that should be shared. I mean, that's a pretty staggering jump in revenue.
Well, again, the point I make is that for a very long time, the constitutional arrangements have been in place in terms of state royalties that are levied on coal and on other minerals. The Albanese Labor government should have known that. The idea that they're scrambling around at pretty short notice, now trying to deal with that, is quite alarming.
OK, the states will receive compensation, though. Jim Chalmers saying yesterday it will be, quote, a sensible contribution. Does that sound fair to you?
Well, again, let's wait and see the detail, because we have had so many different sound bites on this from different ministers. It's evolved over time, and it is up to the Labor government to sort out what their plan is and announce the details of it. And frankly, I don't have any confidence in what they're dropping to the papers today, because They've said different things on a near daily basis, certainly on a weekly basis over the last several weeks. One of the questions we've asked in Parliament is why the Australian people need to wait until Christmas before a plan comes out. They've been in government for more than 6 months, so the Australian people might reasonably ask, why this late mad scramble? We've known for a long time there's an energy price problem. In fact, Labor went to the election promising a solution.
Yeah.
They promised a $275 cut in power prices. Instead, power prices have gone up and up and up.
Yeah, but so
and
much
here
of
we
it,
are.
So much of it is out of the government's control, though, and prices were on the way up.
Well, let's be clear. They knew well when they made that promise. They made that promise 97 times, $275. They knew well at that time that a war in Ukraine had started. Now that's the go-to excuse every day in Parliament for last week and the week before. We kept hearing it from Anthony Albanese, from Jim Chalmers, all their grab bag of excuses, Chris Bowen, as to why they couldn't deliver on the promise they took to the Australian people that was repeated 97 times that power prices would go down by $275. They're going up. Now they're scrambling to find a plan. Okay. They just do not seem to be on top of it.
A couple of quick ones on the RBA here. An 8th straight rate rise in a row. Are you convinced that'll be it, or are you expecting more?
Well, let's first of all acknowledge that the RBA is an independent organisation, and its job, its charge is to keep inflation under control, also achieve employment outcomes and other things, but it's got a very clear objective in terms of keeping inflation under control. Now, it was very disappointing when we saw Bill Shorten, a very senior Labor cabinet minister, attacking the Reserve Bank Governor, Governor Lowe, for comments that Governor Lowe made about the dangers of a wage price spiral and what needs to be done to avoid that. Bill Shorten dismissed that as rubbish. It is very problematic when we have got Labor government ministers attacking the Independent Reserve Bank. They've got a difficult job to do. I'm not saying they've done every aspect of it perfectly. What if they get it wrong? I'm not saying that they will get every aspect of it perfectly right, or that they are, but what I am saying is that our institutional arrangements are there for a good reason. We have an independent Reserve Bank so it can focus on the issues of maintaining price stability, avoiding an inflationary breakout, and they're independent precisely so that they're not responding to day-to-day political pressures, even though, disgracefully, Bill Shorten attempted to put day-to-day political pressure on them.
So when Philip Lowe's term ends, should he get another one?
Well, that'll be a matter for the government and for the board, but what I would say is he's got a difficult job, and I think he is discharging that in a conscientious way. He's certainly somebody with very considerable experience. It'll be a matter for the government, but I certainly don't think that some of the government's attacks, including Bill Shorten's attacks on the Reserve Bank, are justified. In fact, quite the contrary.
Okay, Paul Fletcher, appreciate it. Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.